Chapter 661, Playboy Cultivation Time. While Ziyuan was immersed in his own musings, Yun Jianya was fretting over matters as well. After some hesitation, she said, "You don't have to worry about me. I don't want to drag you down." Ziyuan was stunned. "What are you saying? If I was afraid of being dragged down by you, I wouldn't have saved you back then. I know you're a chivalrous man, but this is different. I plan to visit the Imperial Prison. You've already helped me enough, and I cannot burden you further." Yun Jianya watched him carefully as she spoke. Even though this man was usually too liberal with his words, he was much more reliable than the members in her sect who were always bragging about how loyal they were. It wouldn't be a disgrace if Hung Glei ended up with this man in the end. It was just a pity that the two of them couldn't do anything together because of the technique she cultivated. Ziyuan was slightly embarrassed when he heard her call him a chivalrous man. "Honestly, I wouldn't be trying so hard if you weren't so pretty." As a seasoned pervert, he at least had that level of self-awareness. Something she said struck him, leaving him in shock. "You're going to the Imperial Prison? Don't tell me you still want to rescue your companions? Are you that eager to die?" Yun Jianya shook her head, her long hair fluttering behind her. "I'm not going to rescue them, but to kill them." Ziyuan was at a loss for words. Do all Devil Sect people make such strange leaps in logic? I can't keep up at all. Yun Jianya explained herself. "Don't worry, I know the situation we're in. Now that the Emperor's divine senses cover the palace, I won't be able to rescue them even if I were at my strongest, let alone now, when I'm still injured. I only wish to end their suffering. You've told me about how badly they've been tortured. As the sect master, if I cannot set them free, I should at least end their suffering." His tone was incredibly bleak. She felt powerless in this situation, and was left both angry and conflicted. Ziyuan looked at her strangely. Yun Jianya assumed that he was about to dissuade her, and said, "Don't bother. My Dao will suffer if I do not settle this matter, and I might not be able to make any more progress. If I do this, you won't be exposed either." It had already been a few days since Ziyuan convinced Gu Yui and the others that he could rescue them. Now that so many days had passed, they were probably starting to grow worried. Once they gave in to despair, they might end up betraying Ziyuan. Ziyuan felt slightly ashamed when he heard her say this. His big sis sect master was always thinking about his well-being, yet he was only focused on getting all that he could out of her. He cleared his throat and said, "The security around the prison is tight. It'll be too dangerous if you go. Leave it to me. I'll see if I can find a way to rescue them." "You're going to try to rescue them? How?" Yun Jianya was stunned. She clearly wasn't expecting this from him. From her point of view, rescuing them was impossible, especially with the Emperor overseeing the palace. Ziyuan pointed at his head. "Not through force, of course, but through wit." He gave her a sincere look and said, "I've been to the Imperial Prison already, so I'm more familiar with the people there. Things will go much more smoothly if I'm the one to go. All this while, I've been trying to figure out a way to rescue them." "You're always staring in the direction of the Imperial Prison, lost in thought. I wanted to surprise you, but now that you're talking about taking such a risk, I have no choice but to let you know." As he spoke, a white-robed angel appeared on his shoulder, cursing him for being an incorrigible playboy. He was using the favor granted to him by the Emperor to pick up girls. A black-robed devil appeared on his other shoulder and sneered. "Pa, you're just playing with her feelings. You aren't even doing anything serious." Yun Jianya was slightly alarmed by the intensity burning in his eyes. She subconsciously took a step back. You've already done so much for me." Ziyuan sighed inside when he saw how flustered she was. This woman might be a grandmaster in terms of cultivation, but she'd been a maiden for so long, she was completely naive when it came to such matters. She was a complete novice when compared to him. We can at least be considered friends who have lived together for some time, right? How can I stand aside when a friend is in need? Ziyuan did not go any further. Their relationship hadn't reached that point yet. Going any further now would only ruin things. My mission, given to me by the Emperor, is to infiltrate the Devil Sect. Does this count? Friend, Yun Jianyu's frazzled heart began to calm down when she heard him say this word. She looked at him sideways. Who's living together with you? Why did you have to put it that way? She always appeared cold and arrogant, and rarely showed this immature side of her. Ziyuan was momentarily stunned. Yun Jianyu saw his dazed expression and realized that she had lost her composure. She quickly assumed her usual haughty and domineering demeanor. What are you looking at? I'll dig your eyes out if you keep staring. At the same time, she warned herself that this was Hung Glei's man, and that she shouldn't do anything embarrassing. Big Sis sect master really is a goddess. You're so beautiful even when you're angry. Ziyuan almost burst out laughing when he saw her act angry on purpose. You can't hide anything from me when it comes to such matters. Besides, I didn't register any rage points from you. His honeyed words eased the frown that creased Yun Jianyu's brow. However, she still said stubbornly, I am Hung Glei's master. I advise you to be more careful when making jokes. Ziyuan wrinkled his nose at her. Didn't I say that we should agree to disagree? Yun Jianyu's eyebrows rose. She was just about to lose her temper when Ziyuan quickly said, I'm going to the Eastern Palace. The Crown Prince's secretary can't always be missing. Yun Jianyu laughed when she saw him fleeing in such a shameful manner. Humph! And here I thought that you were so fearless that you were about to do something. The smile that blossomed on her face was as beautiful as the first buds of spring, adding a sliver of warmth to this otherwise cold and lonely lunar goddess. As he made his way to the Eastern Palace, Ziyuan's mind worked on the problem of how to rescue the Devil Sect prisoners. Even though he had the Emperor's permission to do so, he didn't dare make this matter public. He could only drop hints to those who were related to this matter. He still had to figure out how he was going to rescue them himself. It wasn't that hard to rescue them from the prison. It was the consequences that worried him more. He couldn't attract the Devil Sect's suspicion, nor did he want to draw any suspicion from the Imperial Guard. After all, none of them knew the Emperor's true motives. Their first instinct would be to execute him for breaking criminals out of prison. Getting them out of the palace was another headache. Lost in his thoughts, he unknowingly arrived at the Eastern Palace. The scene that greeted him almost bowled him over. The fat Crown Prince was respectfully offering a cup of tea to someone. The Crown Princess was also standing respectfully to the side, her discomfort clearly visible. She seemed to be on the verge of snapping. Ziyuan was rather curious. The Crown Princess usually strutted about like a proud little hen, looking down on everyone else as though they were trash. Who in the world could make her behave in this way? The one who was seated was a scholarly middle-aged man. Even though there were some traces of age on his face, his brows were sharp, and his eyes were as calm as the surface of a pond. It was easy enough to see how popular he would have been with the girls when he was younger. His hair was meticulously combed, and white locks framed his temples. They did not make him seem old, however, but gave him a suave, classy aura. Great tutor, please have some tea, the Crown Prince said weakly. A jolt ran through Ziyuan's mind. He finally recognized this man. No wonder he bore a slight resemblance to the Emperor. It was none other than King Qi Zhaojing. King Qi opened his mouth to speak. It seems that, in the time this king hasn't shown up in the Eastern Palace, the Crown Prince has forgotten many of the rules. That's why I am having the Crown Prince review them today. I am your teacher, as well as your uncle. Do you have any complaints about having you serve me tea? Not at all, not at all. The fatty was clearly frightened of his uncle. He didn't dare talk back to him. The Crown Princess' eyes clearly betrayed her resentment, but she couldn't find any reason to retort, and she was left to sulk by herself. Her anger grew steadily when she saw how timid and useless her husband was. As he watched this scene unfold, a flash of inspiration struck Ziyun. There's a solution. Chapter 662, Tit for Tat. This subject pays his respects to the Crown Prince and Princess. Ziyun said in a ringing voice. A strange atmosphere had pervaded the room. Even the Crown Prince and Princess had their heads bowed, while the rest of the attendants present remained silent out of fear. The loud voice that suddenly rang out immediately became the focal point of everyone's attention. Little Su and Little He, who were standing beside the Crown Prince, stared at him in a daze. This guy is really brave. He dares to speak up even at this sort of time. The Imperial Guards Piao Duandiao and Jiao Sigun, who shared a close relationship with Ziyun, winked as hard as they could from where they stood a distance away, trying to warn him not to say the wrong thing. Ziyun felt a warmth rising up within him. These two were truly worth befriending. However, he had his own plans. He walked over to the Crown Prince and Princess. Who else can make the Crown Prince and Princess serve him tea so respectfully, aside from His Majesty himself? May I ask who you are? He'd decided to offend King Qi publicly after some careful thought. King Qi was the one who had arranged for most of those assassination attempts he'd run into on his way to the capital. Why did he have to be nice to someone who wanted him dead? Furthermore, there was no way the two of them could ever be on friendly terms, not after all the things that had happened after his arrival at the capital. It had been because of him that Murong Tong, of King Qi faction, was transferred away from the critical position of security officer. Now, Left Guard General Cheng Xiong was dead as well. No matter how magnanimous King Qi himself was, there was no way his subordinates would view Ziyun with anything other than bitterness. Ziyun didn't think that King Qi would be that open-minded anyway, so it was better just to offend him to his face, and bind himself more tightly to the Crown Princess instead. His mission for the Emperor, which was to give King Qi the fake Phoenix Nirvana Sutra, wasn't such a pressing matter, so he wasn't too worried about it right now. As he spoke, he looked at King Qi, admiring the mature and graceful middle-aged man who was surely the target of many young ladies. King Qi stared back at him, his eyes devoid of expression. In fact, Ziyun didn't even receive any rage points from him. Ziyun was rather surprised. Clearly, he faced a shrewd individual who had to be dealt with carefully. The Crown Princess was overjoyed at the turn of events. She usually found this guy rather annoying, but he seemed much more pleasant today. Despite her inner joy, she still pretended to reprimand him. This is the wise and world-renowned King Qi. Ziyun, how can you treat him with such disrespect? She deliberately emphasized the words world-renowned and wise precisely to mock him for bullying his juniors. The Crown Princess knew full well why he had shown up this day with this sort of attitude. It was the Crown Prince's faction that had caused Cheng Xiong's death. It was easy enough for her to imagine how King Qi was feeling after losing such an important general. He had to find a way to vent his frustrations, either for himself or on behalf of his subordinates. This was why he was here, deliberately causing trouble for her and the Crown Prince, and she had no choice but to endure it. We've already reaped the benefits of this situation. We'll grant you this petty victory. Now that Ziyun was here, however, she suddenly discovered that she might not have to let him have this empty victory either. Ziyun put on an alarmed look and greeted him respectfully. I greet King Qi. So you're Ziyun. King Qi eyed Ziyun with a slightly complicated expression. For all these years, he'd always held the upper hand in his struggle against the Emperor. His opponent had never been this stupid nephew or his wife, who held such a high opinion of herself. His real opponent had always been his older brother occupying the Dragon Throne. It was true that the Emperor had no mortal rival, but he was helpless before the inexorable march of time. Given the pathetic nature of the Crown Prince, the situation had already been gradually leaning in his favor. Yet, once Ziyun had appeared, he'd been completely caught off guard by the Phoenix Nirvana Sutra he carried, which apparently granted immortality. When he first learned of this, it significantly disrupted the calm he had felt for so long. If the emperor obtained true immortality, what was the point of this struggle? Once this news got out, it even caused some officials who had been secretly on his side to waver. They had joined his faction not because they liked him, but because the emperor, the most powerful man in the world, was about to die, and the crown prince was a worthless fool. Once they learned that the emperor had a chance of obtaining eternal life, though, none of them were dumb enough to tempt fate by going against the emperor. He'd already badly burned. After this fellow's arrival in the capital, he'd lost his grip on both the security officer and the left guard general positions, which were crucial posts. This was the first time his faction had suffered such devastating losses in many years. Is this person my natural nemesis? He erased this thought as soon as it appeared. Someone like him would never let himself entertain such useless thoughts. Ziyuan spoke in reply. This lowly official is called Ziyuan. I have longed to meet with the renowned King Qi. King Qi eyelids twitched. This fella only just expressed his hatred for me, yet now he says he's longed to meet me? Isn't he clearly making a mockery of me? You have successfully trolled Zhaojing for 99 rage points. Ziyuan was disappointed by these rage points. This man, for better or for worse, was a grand master, and his soul force had to be incredibly powerful. He shouldn't only be offering such a small amount. All jokes aside, though, he knew that someone who could go toe-to-toe with the world's most powerful cultivator for such a long time was no pushover. In his conversations with Yun Jianyu, she had told him that there were 2.5 people who scared her. The first two were the Emperor and King Qi. As for someone like Zuxi Chixin, he couldn't even count as half. He was merely slightly more troublesome than an ant. King Qi picked up his teacup and took a sip, then said calmly, Lord Ziyu, from what you said earlier, it seems you don't think it's suitable for me to have the crown prince serve me tea. One's education begins from the very basics, and a strict teacher will help the student appreciate what he learns. This is wisdom, passed down from ancient times. I fear that Lord Ziyu might not have heard of this before, since you grew up on the streets of Bright Moon City. Ziyuan was not upset that King Qi was mocking him for being ignorant. He smiled. Whatever the case, the crown prince is the heir apparent to the throne, and the crown princess will become the empress. I don't think King Qi behavior aligns with the behavior expected of loyal subjects. Many people gasped at his words. Little Su and Little He's faces turned deathly pale. Piao Duandiao and Jiao Sigun sighed inwardly, thinking that Ziyuan was done for. He actually dares to speak to King Qi in such a manner? He's dead for sure. Even the crown princess maid, Rong Mo, stiffened. She was afraid that King Qi's anger would shift to the crown prince and princess. She was no match for this man if he attacked, even if she were at her peak, let alone right now, when she was still heavily injured. She cursed Ziyuan for being a worthless good-for-nothing. You have successfully trolled Rong Mo for 233. 233. 233. Only the crown princess felt incredibly refreshed. She was finding Ziyuan more and more pleasing. She never expected this man to show such loyalty. Perhaps it would be worthwhile to spend some effort to foster him. King Qi's eyes narrowed, but his reaction was quick as well. He said, along the path of learning, respect for the teacher is the most important virtue. Only when one respects their teacher will they attach importance to learning itself. Therefore, there are two situations when the ruler should not treat his subjects as mere subjects. The first is when the subject presides over a sacrifice to the heavens, and the second is when the subject assumes the role of a teacher. Ziyuan thanked the heavens that he'd gone through 9 years of compulsory education before he transmigrated. Otherwise, he wouldn't have understood any of that. Even though he was in a world of cultivation, a system of etiquette has been established across thousands of years in order to ensure the stability of the state. There was no need for a teacher to assume the humble demeanor of a subject when he was imparting the wisdom of the classics. Even as a ruler, one had to assume a respectful and serious attitude when learning, and leave aside his own status. This was the respect for a teacher that King Qi was invoking. His meaning was clear. If a ruler abided by such norms, so should the crown prince and crown princess. The crown princess turned her pretty eyes towards Ziyuan. This was why she'd endured the humiliation earlier on. She was curious as to how Ziyuan was going to respond. For some reason, she felt like this fellow wasn't going to disappoint her. Chapter 663, Grandmasters should not be provoked. Ziyuan replied, as the crown prince's great tutor, the crown prince and princess should indeed be respectful towards you when you are teaching. Off to the side, the fatty nodded his head stupidly in agreement. Exactly, exactly. The crown princess' brow furrowed. She'd been happy with this fellow's performance a moment ago, but was this all he had? Not only that, but the stupidity of the crown prince was truly exhausting as well. King Qi alone remained quiet. Given his status, he could clearly tell that this person had more to say. Sure enough, Ziyuan continued. However, King Qi no longer holds the status of teacher before or after the lesson. There is a reason why a ruler is distinct from his officials. When you aren't teaching him, aren't you to greet him respectfully when you see him? King Qi eyebrows lifted slightly. This fella had a rather sharp tongue. However, this left him in a tricky situation. Ziyuan immediately looked at the crown prince. Your Highness, Crown Prince, are your lessons with King Qi over for the day? The crown prince scratched his head and replied feebly, I think so. Are you going to take me outside so we can play with the frogs together? Ziyuan was well aware that the crown princess' face had darkened. Like hell, I'll go frog catching with you. You almost destroyed what little air of competence I managed to carve out for myself. He cleared his throat and calmed himself before saying, since the classes are over, then it should be King Qi's turn to show the crown prince respect. When he noticed that King Qi remained expressionless, he added fuel to the fire. King Qi seems unwilling to pay respects to the crown prince. Perhaps you're having thoughts of taking his place. King Qi's expression finally cracked. Even though the struggle between himself and the crown prince over the throne was reaching its climax, the two still maintained an appearance of civility. This was hardly something that should be brought up so directly. You have successfully trolled Zhaojing for 666 rage points. His rage was truly stirred to life, and he glared at Ziyuan coldly. In that instant, Ziyuan felt as if he had fallen into a frozen lake, and that he might die at any second. So this the power of a grandmaster. Ziyuan had a bitter smile on his face. What sin had he committed this time? He'd cheated his way to becoming ridiculously strong when compared to his peers, and now he'd provoked the second strongest cultivator in this world. He'd only just been intimidated by the emperor, and now, King Qi was bringing his full pressure to bear as well. King Qi was surprised that Ziyuan still remained unfazed, his expression calm. After all, most ordinary cultivators would not be able to withstand this pressure at this distance. Most of them would be kneeling on the ground right now. He wanted to teach this sharp-tongued brat a lesson, and also whittle away some of the influence his words had just won him. However, he never expected that his actions would be fruitless. As a grandmaster, pride dictated that, if a junior survived one of his attacks, he shouldn't make another move. However, King Qi was also a politician who valued pragmatism above all. He decided to release his aura again. This time, he would hold back nothing. He had to make sure that this fellow learned a harsh lesson. Right at that moment, the crown princess stepped in front of Ziyuan. Even though her expression was slightly pale, she still held her head high. He hasn't been in the Eastern Palace long, so he does not understand many of the rules of etiquette. King Qi, please be magnanimous and forgive him if he has offended you in any way. Ziyuan was surprised to see her frail figure standing in front of him. After all, the crown princess always hated his guts. Now, though, she was standing up for him. King Qi looked at her and chuckled. You're too serious, Crown Princess. Why would this king lower myself to his level? He turned to the fatty next to him. Crown Prince, do you want me to greet you respectfully? The Crown Prince waved his thick hands vigorously. There's no need. No need. This teacher of his scared him, and he did not dare to force him to bow to him. The Crown Princess glared at him angrily. She really hated this stupid and cowardly side of him. However, she also knew that King Qi's status was unique. Pressuring him wasn't a sensible decision. After this interruption, King Qi had no desire to stay any longer. Continuing to target Ziyuan would also be demeaning for someone of his status. He quickly found a reason to bid the Crown Prince and Princess farewell. The Crown Princess was glad to clear this huge headache away as soon as possible, and did not try to make him stay. Just as King Qi was about to walk out the door, he paused beside Ziyuan, then said ambiguously, Lord Ziyu, you're quite something. Thank you, King Qi, for your praise. Ziyuan's attitude was perfectly respectful. He did not want the other party to find any reason to act against him. King Qi choked on his breath. Do you think I'm praising you? He snorted, then with a flick of his sleeves, he left. Once he left, everyone in the Eastern Palace sighed in relief. It had been way too suffocating just now. Even though King Qi was the Crown Prince's great tutor, he only made the occasional appearance. The lesser tutor was usually the one who conducted lessons. Most of the people in the Eastern Palace were the Crown Prince and Crown Princess men. Everyone looked at Ziyuan with admiration as he greeted the Crown Princess. I greet the Crown Princess. As for the Crown Prince, he had already dragged his eunuchs with him to go play. He couldn't be bothered with Ziyuan. The Crown Princess looked at her idiot husband, then back at the man before her. She sighed. Forget about Lord 11. The Crown Prince can't even compare to this fellow. She quickly smoothed out her thoughts and flashed Ziyuan a smile. Thank you for what you did today, Lord Ziyu. I'm a subordinate of the Eastern Palace. It's my duty to help the Crown Princess with her troubles. Ziyuan deliberately left out any mention of the Crown Prince. Everyone knew that the real head of the Eastern Palace was the Crown Princess. No one found his comments unsuitable. More tension drained from the Crown Princess' face. His loyalty had clearly pleased her. You should be careful in the future. She was warning him to beware of King Qi retaliation. Ziyuan smiled. I'm under the protection of the Crown Prince and Crown Princess, who enjoy good fortune. I believe I'll be fine. The Crown Princess looked at him disdainfully. You only know how to say flowery words. What sort of fortune do I possess? Ziyuan said with a deadly earnest expression, the Crown Princess will become the mother of this empire. How could you not be blessed with fortune? The princess maid was stunned when she saw how shaken the Crown Princess was. Wasn't this fellow's tone a little too flirtatious? To her greater shock, the Crown Princess did not seem annoyed at all. I only took a few days off. Did something happen while I was away? Ziyuan took this opportunity to say, Crown Princess, I'm taking some time off. I need to go to the Imperial Prison. The Imperial Prison. The Crown Princess frowned. Why are you going there? Cheng Xiang's case had already been settled, so the criminals there were already meaningless to her. I'd like to interrogate those assassins further to see if I can get some more information about him, replied Ziyuan. The Crown Princess knew that he was talking about King Qi. Fine, she replied. However, if you discover anything, do not act rashly. Discuss it with me first. When Ziyuan left the palace, the Crown Princess maid, Rong Mo, couldn't help but ask in a hushed voice, Your Highness, why are you treating that brat so well? Didn't you find him really annoying before? The Crown Princess sat down leisurely, accepting the tea that her maid had brought over. I don't mind someone who's annoying, she replied, but I cannot stand incompetence. Even though this Ziyuan is rather annoying, he's a talented individual. I just happen to lack someone like that under me. The main forces in the struggle against King Qi were His Majesty's trusted aides, the Lu clan, which backed the Empress, as well as her own father. She, however, had too few trustworthy men under her. From where she stood, King Qi wasn't the only enemy. Once she defeated King Qi, she had to worry about the Empress family. Even though her first meeting with Ziyuan had been rather disagreeable, he'd done rather well after that. Having someone like him on her side would definitely be of great help. She sighed inside. It's all the Crown Prince's fault for being so useless. I have to take care of everything. Meanwhile, King Qi was sipping his own tea in another gazebo within the palace. A troop of golden armored imperial guards approached him quickly and greeted him. We greet King Qi. We await your orders. If he could have the left guard general in his pocket, placing some of his own men within the imperial guards was just too easy. King Qi stared at the golden fish swimming about in the lake nearby and smiled. Invite Ziyuan here, he said. How many years had it been since someone dared to provoke him like this? The last time was probably a few years ago. Several guards had acted arrogantly towards him because they were the Crown Prince's personal guards. In the end, weren't their heads all placed in little wooden boxes? He was a king and a grand master. He would never tolerate being humiliated by a nobody. Besides, many of those in his faction were furious by what had happened to Cheng Xiang. They needed something to appease them. It was this kid's fault for being so unsightly. Chapter 664, If we can't be saved, we'll just wait for death. The guards exchanged worried looks. Ziyuan has been appointed a baron by His Majesty, and he is also the Crown Prince's secretary. Would it be? King Qi's voice was indifferent. There's nothing to worry about. You only need to bring him here. Seeing that they didn't have to do the deed themselves, those guards sighed in relief. They clasped their fists and left to carry out the order. King Qi looked in the direction of the Eastern Palace, his lips turned up with a hint of ridicule. The Crown Princess' intention to raise a right-hand man for herself didn't escape his notice. He would not let it happen that easily. Meanwhile, Ziyuan had just left the Eastern Palace, but was stopped by Piao Duandiao and Jiao Sigun. What's wrong? Ziyuan said curiously. The two of them clearly wanted to say something to him, but were hesitating. Piao Duandiao remained quiet for a long moment. When he was sure that no one had noticed them, he said quietly, Lord Ziyu, you have to be very careful for the next few days. Why would you say that? Ziyuan was slightly alarmed by how serious they seemed. Do you know why the two of us were able to become lesser guard leaders within the Eastern Palace? Asked Jiao Sigun. Ziyuan couldn't help but smile when he looked at these two. Because the two of you are hidden dragons within the Eastern Palace. They froze momentarily, not understanding his turn of phrase. However, they still carried on. There should have been no way for anyone with qualifications like ours to rise through the ranks so quickly. Our predecessors were both top-notch imperial guards in terms of qualifications and cultivation. They were also full of spirit, out to make a name for themselves. Once, though, they behaved rather arrogantly towards King Qi. They provoked him to his face. King Qi didn't say anything at the time, but the next day, they did not report for the morning roll call. Everyone went looking for them. Eventually, they found two headless corpses. The subordinates who followed their lead and took part in criticizing King Qi all had their heads removed as well. The matter caused a rather large uproar, but it died down without any real conclusion. Ziyuan was stunned. No wonder everyone in the Eastern Palace had been shaking like quails. Such a thing had happened before. King Qi seemed like a refined and scholarly individual. It was unexpected that he would have such a vicious side to him. No wonder he had managed to spar with the emperor for this long. They were both blood brothers. Clearly, the viciousness and paranoia ran in the family. He suddenly noticed that the two guards were looking at him strangely, and was taken aback. Why are you looking at me like that? Those two didn't leave King Qi as badly burned as you did earlier on, they replied. Good luck. They sighed and walked away, as if he were a dead man, beyond saving. Ziyuan stared at their retreating figures numbly. He had to admit that, despite being so amusing, these two men were rather loyal. They had at least done their best to warn him. They hadn't let him down. However, he wasn't all that terrified. After all, offending King Qi was part of his plans. The Right Guard General Guozhi just happened to be on his patrol when he arrived at the imperial prison. He immediately flashed a friendly smile when he saw Ziyuan. Oh my, brother Ziyu! Which wind has blown you back here today? This fellow had solved such a difficult problem for him back then, so he found him rather pleasing. Ziyuan smiled, and the two exchanged several conventional greetings. He then told Guozhi of his intentions, which rather surprised the general. Didn't we already obtain oral confessions from them? Why do you still need to investigate? The Crown Princess has asked me to question them further, replied Ziyuan. It's just routine business. Guozhi had a look of understanding. No problem, brother Ziyu. You can question them as much as you want. I've actually been in a dilemma as to what to do with these fellows. Now that Cheng Xiang's case has already concluded, they're already useless, and keeping them here is a problem too. Many times, I've just wanted to. He drew his thumb across his neck. Then, he said, but His Majesty never gave the order, and I don't dare go too far on my own. Brother Ziyu, if you could you sound out His Majesty's attitude towards them? Find out how I should deal with these fellows. Why haven't you asked him about it yourself, brother Guo? You're much higher ranked than I. Ziyuan was shocked to discover that the emperor actually hadn't told him that he was going to let them go. This made his following plans much more difficult. Guozhi grew annoyed. I wouldn't dare take such a risk. His Majesty has already berated us several times in the wake of the attack on the palace. Now, given Cheng Xiang's fate, it's only reasonable that I should be lying low as well. But you're different, brother Ziyu. His Majesty told me that you're allowed to enter the prison freely, and to cooperate with any request you have. I'm honestly quite envious. Brother Ziyu has only been here a few days, yet you've already obtained His Majesty's favor. Ziyuan cursed inwardly. The emperor was being way too tactful. Guozhi might not be able to get the hint. Looks like I'll have to figure out a way to save them on my own. After some thought, he said, for now, please withdraw all of the experts from the prison. Guozhi was shocked by his request. What if the prisoners escape? We're inside the inner palace, said Ziyuan. How can they escape? Besides, they're still restrained by the soul-reaping chains of the embroidered envoy. Guozhi was quite troubled. But why are we suddenly removing the guards? Ziyuan pulled him to the side and said quietly, I want to create an illusion for those prisoners, to make them misunderstand, and think that there's a chance for them to escape. If they are given a hope of survival, they may begin to treasure their lives and let their guard down. This will allow me to gain more information. Guozhi's eyes lit up. Brilliant, as expected. No wonder you were able to get so much information out of them last time. With that, he quickly moved to withdraw his subordinates, leaving behind only the lowest-ranked jailers that maintained the prison's basic operations. After completing all this, he rushed over to Ziyuan and said, Brother Ziyu, go ahead and do what you have to. We've tightened security around the Imperial Palace after the recent attack, and I need to continue with my patrol. I won't be keeping you company. Ziyuan clasped his fist. I'll invite you for a drink next time, brother Guo. Sounds good. Guozhi waved and left with his men. Ziyuan remained silent for a moment. This fella seemed rather simple, but no one equals in his position could be this stupid. Ever since he'd almost fallen to Cheng Xiang's machinations, he didn't dare underestimate the intelligence of these officials. Guozhi had probably deduced what he was trying to do, which was why he was going as far away as possible. He didn't want anything to do with this matter. Of course, if not for the emperor's instructions to him beforehand, he wouldn't have withdrawn his men so quickly. Ziyuan sorted out his thoughts, then walked straight into the prison. In the deepest level of the prison, several individuals were whispering amongst themselves. "Elder, Lord Fire, why hasn't anyone come to save us even after all this time?" It was Gu Yui who spoke. His hopes were as high as the heavens these days, and the higher they climbed, the more restless he became. Elder Sun Lehen opened his eyes. "Do you think it's that easy to rescue someone from the imperial prison? Have some patience," he said. Even though he was covered in blood, his eyes were still bright. What if he never planned to save us? What if he lied to us? As Gu Yui said this, his face slowly drained of color. This thought seemed much more likely. Sun Lehen and Solitary Fire also fell silent. They had clearly entertained this possibility as well. Sun Lehen managed to retain his composure. "Cease your complaints." Solitary Fire added, "Indeed. We were all prepared to die during this assassination attempt. If he can save our lives, then we will be thankful. If not, then so be it." Gu Yui's expression flickered. "The two of you are already so old, so you're obviously content with your lives. But I'm still young." He harbored the thought that, if Ziyuan really went back on his word, he would confess everything to Lord Guo. This secret might just be worth his own life in return. A clear voice rang out. "I didn't expect Solitary Fire to still be so open-minded. That's truly admirable." This group of prisoners turned around, both shocked and pleasantly surprised. When they saw Ziyuan nearby, they all sighed in relief. Even though they did not regard their own lives that highly, survival was obviously more preferable to death. However, when they noticed the group of jailers standing behind him, their faces all paled. You're not here to silence us, are you?" asked Gu Yui, a quaver in his voice. Ziyuan chuckled. He was just about to reply when there was a sudden burst of noise, and several jailers were pushed down the stairs. 8 golden-armored imperial guards strutted in and viciously berated them. "You blind fools! How dare you stop us from bringing King Qi, the one he wishes to meet?" Chapter 665, Ingenious Plan. The disturbance caused the remaining jailers to draw their weapons. Who dared act so brazenly in such a place? When they heard the words King Qi, though, they sheathed their blades again. King Qi enjoyed tremendous prestige within the imperial court, and had always maintained a decent reputation. None of these jailers dared to offend him. The golden-armored guards were extremely satisfied by the fear in the jailers' eyes. With King Qi backing them, they could walk proudly wherever they went. They arrived in front of Ziyuan, their demeanor so arrogant that their noses were pointing almost to the sky. "Are you Ziyuan?" Ziyuan sized them up. He wasn't interested in their appearances, but their auras. The leader was at the 6th rank, while the rest were at the 5th rank. Utilizing the style of formation combat that all Imperial Guards were familiar with, they could easily take down a 7th rank cultivator. Besides, they were still within the Imperial Palace. No one had ever refused the summons brought by an Imperial Guard. "I am. May I ask why you're here?" asked Ziyuan. "King Qi invites you for an audience." The leader with the big nostrils said, clasping his fist casually. His demand alarmed the imprisoned Devil Sect assassins. They had patiently waited for Ziyuan's arrival, yet now that he was here, he was going to be whisked away by someone else? Ziyuan looked rather troubled. "The Crown Prince and Crown Princess have requested that I question these prisoners. Can I go over once I'm done here?" The one with the big nostrils sneered. If King Qi wishes to meet with anyone, they would immediately rush to answer his summons, out of fear and respect. Who would dare put him off with all manner of excuses, like you're doing now? Are you saying that the orders of the Crown Prince and Crown Princess are meaningless? Perhaps, in your eyes, the Crown Prince and Crown Princess are less worthy of respect than King Qi, replied Ziyuan. The jailers stood silently to the side, their eyes fixed on the ground in front of their toes. They didn't dare participate in such a conflict as this. The one with the big nostrils almost choked on his breath. When he recovered, his voice was full of annoyance. Don't try to instigate anything. King Qi is both the Crown Prince's senior and his teacher. Even if the Crown Prince were here, he would order you to meet with King Qi first. If you don't believe me, you can seek out the Crown Prince and ask him. You have successfully trolled Lu Chania for 444 rage points. The jailers subconsciously backed away several more steps, grumbling inwardly. Why did they have to be caught up in all this? Ziyuan sighed and shook his head. King Qi is King Qi, but you are merely an imperial guard. Even though the Crown Prince and Crown Princess do not dare to raise a hand against King Qi, do you think that they cannot take care of a mere guard like you? Once your words reach their ears, do you think they will let this matter slide? The one with the big nostrils was slightly shaken. He was beginning to regret his words. It was all Ziyuan's fault. How else could he have been led to speak in such an inappropriate manner? Humph, whatever. This brat won't be able to act smug for long. Once he falls into King Qi clutches, he would probably lose his head immediately. You have successfully trolled Lu Chania for 567 rage points. Now. Ziyuan had been waiting for the precise moment when the guard became distracted. He dashed forward and stabbed a finger into his forehead. His current level of cultivation could not be compared with that of an ordinary 7th rank. Furthermore, with his instantaneous movement skill, there was no way for his opponent to dodge the attack. With a loud bang, a gush of blood shot out of his forehead. Lu Chania was so shocked that his eyes were completely wide open. He hadn't expected the one facing him to attack him, let alone go straight for a killing blow. The Imperial Guards following him were all stunned. They scrambled to draw their blades and surround Ziyuan. Right at that moment, they felt a tremendous suction force, and all their ki suddenly seemed to vanish into thin air. They lost their balance and staggered towards the center, where Ziyuan was. Ziyuan's finger thrusted out repeatedly, instantly ending their lives. All of this happened too quickly for anyone else to react. By the time they realized what was happening, the golden-armored soldiers were already sprawled on the ground like so much dirt. Elder Sun Lehen was shocked. The reactions and cultivation Ziyuan had displayed were shocking. He even wondered if he could have dispatched all of these guards this efficiently on his own. Solitary Fire's eyes widened. This kid's cultivation was much higher than when he was on his way to the capital. Just how little time has passed since their last meeting. Gu Yui was incredibly jealous. After all, Ziyuan was nothing but a drafted son-in-law whom everyone looked down on. Even though he'd displayed his talents during the clan's tournament, he never took Ziyuan seriously. However, in such a short amount of time, Ziyuan had already risen to this level, far surpassing himself. No wonder his junior sister liked him. Pa! That junior sister will be mine one day. The surrounding jailers all drew their blades and faced Ziyuan as though he was a dangerous foe. Lord Ziyu, what is the meaning of this? They stuttered. They were clearly terrified by what they had just witnessed. Ziyuan chuckled and said, "Don't worry. This is between me and King Qi. It has nothing to do with you guys." The jailers exchanged silent glances, then sighed in relief. However, they secretly cursed him in their hearts. Is this guy an idiot? How dare he publicly offend King Qi in such a manner? The instant they let down their guard, Ziyuan summoned 100 Warble, and an invisible sound wave rippled outwards. He'd requested that Guo Ji transfer away all the experts from the prison, so these jailers were all ordinary individuals. How could any of them withstand such power? All of them fainted. The jailers weren't the only ones knocked out. The members of the Devil Sect fainted as well. Sun Lehen and the others had high cultivations, but their strength was being sealed away by the embroidered envoy seals. The torture they had suffered also left them severely weakened. Ziyuan moved quickly to strike the jailers' acupoints. Suddenly, he sensed an incredibly powerful divine will sweep over him. Ziyuan paled. This power was extremely familiar, as he had already experienced it several times. Only the emperor possessed this sort of power. Meanwhile, King Qi, who was enjoying his tea in his gazebo, suddenly stiffened. He looked curiously towards the prison and muttered, "What's happening there that has even gotten my brother startled?" The divine will departed as quickly as it arrived. Ziyuan figured that it was probably because the emperor realized that it was only him, and moved his attention away. Ziyuan sat down on a stool nearby, gasping for air. His entire body was soaked in sweat. No wonder everyone said that the emperor's will stretched across the entire palace. He finally understood what they meant. The emperor obviously didn't care about the conversations of ordinary people, but he could immediately detect if any strange auras erupted within the palace. No wonder Yun Jianyu had chosen to attack when the emperor wasn't around. The emperor would have immediately dealt with the situation as soon as they tried anything. Ziyuan looked at the jailers again. He'd made sure everyone else had been transferred away, so no one else should have been able to figure out what had happened yet. However, there was one last thing that he had to take care of. He took out a bottle from his brilliant glass bead and poured a few drops of the liquid it contained into a teapot. Then, he fed the tea to the jailers. Ever since the emperor had assigned him this mission, he had been devising a plan of action. Breaking the prisoners out of the imperial prison wasn't that difficult. Dealing with the aftermath was the real problem. He couldn't make the devil sect suspicious of him, nor could he cause anyone from the imperial palace to suspect him. What he needed was a scapegoat. In the end, King Qi was the only one he could think of who had both the ability and the motive to break the prisoners out. Furthermore, by pinning it on King Qi, the emperor could easily suppress the matter once it was reported afterwards. After all, if King Qi was implicated, the two sides would not enter into open hostility unless they absolutely had to. Neither Guo Ji nor the others would have reason to grow suspicious. That was why he had deliberately provoked King Qi earlier on. He wanted King Qi to send his people to act against him. He just hadn't expected him to respond so well, and dispatch his men so quickly. Of course, another issue had cropped up. He couldn't let himself be exposed by the jailers' confessions. Killing them was the easiest way, but he did not want to kill innocents for no reason. Furthermore, he had just asked Guo Ji to transfer his cultivators away from the prison. If those that remained behind were found dead afterwards, even an idiot would be able to guess that he was the culprit. That was why he needed these jailers alive, to serve as witnesses to the arrival of King Qi men. As for what he did after that, he needed these jailers to forget about them. The worries be gone that he added to the tea was something he'd obtained during the internal strife within the Chu clan, a drug that was originally to be used on Qin Wanru. This drug could make whoever who ingested it forget the things that happened within a set period of time. I really am a genius. Ziyuan was rather amazed at his own work. However, he was hurting inside, because he'd just used one of the world's strongest aphrodisiacs on a group of ugly men. Chapter 666, Exposed. The jailers were all bunched up together. When Ziyuan saw how high the tents around their trousers were, he idly wondered if their butts would get hurt once they regained consciousness. He suddenly noticed something. The trousers on one of those guys seemed rather flat. He felt great sympathy for that man. If even one of the world's most powerful aphrodisiacs doesn't work on you, what's the point in carrying on with life? After completing these tasks, Ziyuan went to work on the golden armored guards, stripping them of their clothing and armor. He stored their corpses into the brilliant glass bead. He hadn't resorted to using weapons earlier because he had been worried that the blood might splatter onto the armor and stain them. This might cause unnecessary trouble if they met with any inspections when they tried to leave the palace later on. After all this was done, he opened the prison cells and roused the members of the devil sect. What happened just now? Gu Yui asked, looking around in confusion. Sun Lehen and Solitary Fire were more collected. They could both sense that it had been a spiritual attack. Ziyuan did not bother with a proper explanation. I knocked them out. Hurry up and change into these clothes. I'm getting all of you out of the palace. The members of the devil sect snapped out of their daze, renewed hope in their survival spurring their excitement. All of them hurried to change into the outfits offered to them. Even though many members of the devil sect had been captured, most were wounded on the day of the attack, and more had perished at the brutal hands of the jailers and interrogators. Now, only 7 remained, including Sun Lohen. 8 golden armored guards had entered the prison, which suited them perfectly. Ziyuan quickly helped them undo the embroidered envoy seals. All of them were incredibly weak from torture. It would take a long time for them to recover their original strength. When he noticed that some of them were having trouble even walking, Ziyuan sighed, then took out some of the medicine he'd previously acquired from Divine Physician Ji. Swallowing the pills sent warm flows of energy through the bodies of the prisoners, and they quickly regained a substantial amount of strength. Even the weakest one among them could walk again. Sun Lohen was the first to clasp his fist towards Ziyuan. Lord Ziyu, you have shown us great favor. We will engrave this gratitude on our hearts forever. Even if we have to cross mountains of daggers and seas of flames, as long as Lord Ziyu requests it of us, we will not show any hesitation. Ziyuan chuckled in reply. There's no need for such serious words. We're not out of danger yet. Let's keep our guard up. He did not take these words to heart. They might truly be speaking these words out of the sincerity of their hearts right now, but people always changed. It was unlikely that anyone in this world would be willing to cross mountains of daggers and seas of flames. He was only doing this to gain favor with Yun Jianyu and Chu Hongglei anyway. The gratitude of these fellows was merely a bonus. The devil sect prisoners snapped back to reality and grunted their acknowledgement. They were still within the palace, and it was too early to rejoice. After they donned the armor, Gu Yui raised a blade to end the jailer's lives. These men had tormented them day and night. Now that the tables were turned, how was he supposed to leave them alive and let go of this grudge? Ziyuan quickly stopped him. Brother Gu, I still have a use for these people. But many of our brothers died at their hands during interrogation. Gu Yui replied, his voice full of reluctance. Ziyuan made his tone more serious. The top priority is to rescue all of you right now. I need them alive in order to deal with the aftermath. Sun Lohen frowned. Yui, don't cause young Master Ziyu trouble, he said. He was an elder with great status in the sect. Gu Yui had no choice but to sheath his weapon resentfully. Ziyuan sighed in relief. He beckoned them to follow, and led them out of the prison. They didn't meet anyone along the way, since he already had them transferred away beforehand. All the prisoners were overcome with emotion when they finally exited the imperial prison and saw sunlight once more. They had believed that their deaths were inevitable, yet they were now able to see the light of day again. All of this was thanks to young Master Ziyu. Their eyes shone with gratitude as they looked at Ziyuan. The wave of positivity was even enough to overcome Gu Yui's previous distaste for Ziyuan. I'll take you guys beyond the palace gates, Ziyuan said quietly. You all have King Qi command tokens, and you're wearing this set of armor. It shouldn't be that hard for you to leave. Thank you, young Master Ziyu. All of them clasped their fists. Not long after they left the prison, however, a gentle voice called out. Wait! Ziyuan's entire body stiffened. He felt as though he'd sunk straight into a frozen sea. How was he this unlucky? He'd actually run into King Qi. He noticed that Sun Lohen and the others had silently moved their hands to their sword hilts. He quickly sent them voice transmissions. Don't act rashly. It's King Qi. He has Grand Master rank cultivation. He didn't need to say anything else. When they realized who it was, they gave up on the idea of taking down this person. They were well aware of King Qi's reputation. His cultivation was at the Grand Master rank. Even if they were at their peak, they wouldn't even be able to scratch him, let alone now, when they were all seriously injured. "Where are you all going?" King Qi asked with a frown. He had noticed that the Emperor's divine will had fallen on this place, and was curious as to what had happened here that drew his attention, so he decided to come take a look for himself. It was mere coincidence that he'd run into Xuan's group. Xuan's mind moved quickly, throwing up various options to deal with him. In the end, he said, "Didn't King Qi invite me to a meeting?" He thanked the heavens that he hadn't made any of the prisoners don the uniform of the guard with the big nostrils. He wouldn't be able to bluff his way through otherwise. King Qi probably didn't know what the ordinary guardsman looked like, right? He had no choice but to gamble. If things really fell through, he could always call on the Emperor. If his plan to infiltrate the devil sect failed, so be it. He wasn't about to throw his life away. "Oh," replied King Qi. "Indeed, I was looking for you. The rest of you are dismissed." The first half of his comment was for Xuan, and the latter half was for the guards. Xuan sighed in relief. Thank goodness the other party didn't recognize them. The consequences could have been horrifying. His eyes flicked to Sun Lehen and the others, clearly instructing them to leave. Now that King Qi was so close, he didn't even dare send a voice transmission. He could not let King Qi suspect that anything was amiss. He'd already told them everything they needed to know. As for getting out of the palace, if they'd managed to infiltrate the palace that day, it probably wouldn't be an issue. Sun Lehen's group didn't even dare lift their head. They clasped their fists and turned around to leave. "Wait!" King Qi suddenly frowned. "Why don't I see Lu Chinayu?" Sun Lehen and the others felt their hearts begin to pound. They didn't even know who Lu Chinayu was, so what were they supposed to say? Xuan had received rage points from him before, so he knew that this was the leader with the big nostrils. His mind raced for a solution, and he said, "Leader Lu was summoned by the Emperor earlier on." "Summoned by my brother, the Emperor?" King Qi's expression flickered. Could Lu Chinayu be the reason why the Emperor's will descended on this place? That doesn't seem right, though. He doesn't seem capable of doing anything that would draw the Emperor's divine will. He studied Sun Lehen's group. Why don't I see Leader Wang either? All of you, raise your heads." The prisoners felt chills run through their bodies when they heard this command. Xuan was panicking inside. He didn't know how to explain himself now either. Chapter 667, Suspicions Aroused. At this moment, a delicate voice floated over. "Lord Xiu, it's been such a long time. Why are you still here?" King Qi frowned when he heard this voice. Xuan was immediately overjoyed when he heard this voice. He turned to see a beauty in an imperial dress, tailed by a group of imperial guards led by Piao Duandiao and Jiao Sigun. He quickly greeted them. "I greet the Crown Princess." Everyone from the devil sect lowered their heads as well. Gu Yui snuck a look at her, and his eyes went wide. The girls he'd spent his life around were all flirty and seductive. They were incredibly charming, and lovely to be around. However, none of them could compare to the woman in front of him in terms of class and elegance. He felt his throat go dry when he saw the graceful palace outfit and its lavish decorations. His heart began to pound. Holy shit, how can someone be this beautiful? Junior sister, I'm not being disloyal to you. This crown princess is just too ravishing. Chu Honglei wasn't inferior to the crown princess in terms of looks. In fact, when it came to beauty, it was the crown princess who lost out. However, Gu Yui had lived his entire life on the bottom rung of society, and he spent his days among those of the devil sect. Someone so noble and high class was fatally attractive to him. To someone like him, princesses and other noble women would always seem more attractive than the women in the world of martial arts, even if they were similar in terms of appearance. The crown princess slowly walked over. There seemed to be a slight fragrance lingering in the air. It was different from the perfumes that were used liberally in brothels, and had a much more sophisticated aroma. He couldn't describe it in detail, but it smelled like burning silver. King Qi's attention was drawn to her as well. Ling Long, I didn't think you'd be so free that you could wander to such a place. The crown princess was annoyed when she heard him address her by her name and not her title. He was clearly trying to use his status as her elder to pressure her. However, she didn't make a fuss about it, and only replied, I asked Lord Xiu to take care of some matters for me, but he hadn't returned after such a long time. The palace has been a rather restless place after the assassin's attack, and I was worried that he might have been attacked by someone with ill intent. I decided to come here to have a look for myself. Ziyuan felt a warmth rising within him. This woman acts fiercely on the outside, but I suppose she's got a good heart after all. He took note of Piao Duandiao and Jiao Sigun as well, standing behind the crown princess. These fellows had probably warned her about this. I'll take them to the government brothel once things calm down. The devil sect members were all astonished. They didn't expect this young Master Xiu to have risen in status so quickly. He had only been in the palace a handful of days, yet the right guard general was already calling him brother, and even the crown princess seemed to be extremely concerned for him. Gu Yui was incredibly jealous. Ziyuan is only a smidge more handsome than me. Why do all these pretty girls fawn over him? My junior sister acts that way, and now it seems the crown princess does as well. How are the rest of us supposed to carry on with our lives? King Qi remained expressionless, but he could take her hint. It seems Lord Xiu gains the favor of others rather easily. He's only been here a few days, yet Ling Long is already taking such good care of him. The crown princess knew he was implying that she was only doing this because he was handsome. Furious, she replied coldly, I will take care of everyone who works earnestly for the crown prince's sake. King Qi chuckled, but did not engage her on the topic any further. This king merely wanted to invite Ziyuan for a chat. I don't think you'd mind, would you, Ling Long? The crown princess chuckled. King Qi, be at ease. I'll just wait right here. She made it clear that she was watching, and so he'd better not try anything. King Qi laughed, then said to Ziyuan, follow me, Lord Xiu. Ziyuan bowed. Please, King Qi. King Qi nodded, and began to walk off to the side. Ziyuan gestured for Sun Lehen and the others to leave immediately. Sun Lehen and the others weren't stupid. They took this chance to withdraw quietly. Only Gu Yui hesitated, giving the crown princess one last reluctant look. King Qi had already moved off, and the crown princess entourage was watching Ziyuan, so no one was looking at them. After walking for a few dozen meters, King Qi stopped at a rock garden. Let's talk here. Any further and Ling Long will worry, since she won't be able to see you. Ziyuan offered a standard response. The crown princess empathizes with us subjects. At the same time, he mocked him secretly. Do you really have no self-awareness? She's only acting like this because you've killed others within the Eastern Palace without a second thought before. King Qi sized him up curiously. Ling Long has never cared so much about someone before. You're the first. Ziyuan remained silent. He suspected he'd said such a thing to stir in him unnecessary delusions about the crown princess. If the crown princess actually fell in love with him, it would be just too perfect. King Qi continued, I heard that first Miss Chu took you in as a drafted son-in-law. I am rather surprised, since I've met that girl before. It wouldn't be wrong to call her a stunning talent. Everyone in the capital had been curious as to who this outstanding girl was going to marry. When they learned that she was going to marry you, their eyes almost fell out of their sockets. Even I found it quite surprising myself. Now, though, even the crown princess is taking such good care of you. It seems there really is something special about you. Ziyuan looked embarrassed. I'm really not as great as you're making me out to be, King Qi. I'm a little handsome, and I'm pretty cool too, I guess. And I'm loyal, upstanding. It's not worth going on, though, since I can't compare to King Qi at all. King Qi eyelids twitched. For some reason, speaking with this brat always made him want to give him a good spanking. You have successfully trolled King Qi for 213. 213. 213. He took a deep breath and suppressed his inner urge, wisely choosing to change the topic. What does Lord Xiu think about Cheng Xiang's case? Ziyuan feigned naivete. I haven't been in the capital long, and I'm merely a minor, almost trivial, official. The amount of information I have access to is very limited. I really don't know much detail regarding Lord Cheng's case. King Qi couldn't help but give him another look. How could someone so shameless exist in this world? If the crown princess hadn't been watching them from close by, he might have just beaten this brat to death. You have successfully trolled King Qi for 300. 300. 300. Even though he was usually shrewd and careful, coming up against such obstacles one after another had left him rather annoyed. From what I know, the assassins only began to implicate General Cheng after they met with you, Lord Xiu, he said coldly. Ziyuan was alarmed. This man had such an extensive intelligence network. He even had eyes within the imperial prison. Ziyuan replied without batting an eyelid. King Qi, I'm pretty sure you know who it was that truly wished to bring down General Cheng. I am but a pawn. How could I affect the greater situation on my own? King Qi seemed surprised. You're rather daring. I'm amazed you dare to say something like that. Ziyuan gave his most innocent look. I wouldn't dare to hide anything in front of you, King Qi. King Qi smiled ambiguously. Is that really true? Ziyuan slapped his own chest in assurance. Of course it is. Heaven and earth can serve as witnesses. Fine then. I just happen to have something I want to ask you about. King Qi stared into his eyes. Can the Phoenix Nirvana Sutra truly grant eternal life? Ziyuan revealed a forced smile. His Majesty has already informed the world about this. There is no need for King Qi to ask me. King Qi said coldly. I am asking you right now. Ziyuan immediately replied. This technique clearly cannot grant His Majesty eternal life. I never said anything about whether or not I can attain immortality, though. King Qi was surprised by the honest conviction in his voice. Do you know that, if these words reach His Majesty's ears, he might deem you to have committed a capital offense? Ziyuan smiled bitterly and said, King Qi is a renowned and wise sage. I don't think you'd cause me trouble over such matters. King Qi chuckled and gently patted his shoulder. You have some prospects, kid. I am optimistic about you. Ziyuan's expression flickered, his eyes flicking to his shoulder. Don't tell me this is some bone-melting palm technique or something like that. I doubt I'd even know what killed me if a Grandmaster was after my life. Hurry back. Ling Long is already starting to panic, King Qi said with a smile. Thank you, King Qi. Ziyuan hurried away. The pressure he faced when being around such a person was just too great. When Ziyuan was a distance away, a figure appeared about a zhang behind King Qi. King Qi's smile instantly vanished. Help me look into two matters. The first is why the Emperor would ask for Lu Chinayu, and the second is to help me keep an eye on Golden Token 11. For some reason, I feel as though he and Ziyuan are the same person. The timing in which the both of them have appeared seems too coincidental. Understood, replied the shadowy figure. Chapter 668, Guiding Light. King Qi watched Ziyuan's retreating figure. An 11th Golden Token envoy had suddenly appeared as soon as he arrived at the capital, while, after all these years, the embroidered envoy had only ever had 10 Golden Token envoys that had gone through a stringent selection process. This Golden Token 11 seemed to have appeared out of thin air. Even he couldn't find out anything about him, despite his extensive information network. After matters surrounding Cheng Xiang had come to a head, he'd looked into the matter and discovered that Cheng Xiang had his suspicions regarding Golden Token 11. And it was only after Ziyuan entered the imperial prison that the assassins immediately changed their tune. Their confessions were the final nail in Cheng Xiang's coffin. Even though it seemed rather unlikely, it was better to have someone look into it quietly. The Phoenix Nirvana Sutra was on his mind as well. Even though Ziyuan said that it didn't grant immortality, he was not about to trust him so easily. The only way he could be sure was if he could snag a copy to examine for himself. He'd called Ziyuan over precisely because he wanted to extract the Phoenix Nirvana Sutra out of him. However, after several meetings with him, it was clear that Ziyuan wasn't easy to deal with. Now that the Crown Princess was sheltering him like this, he couldn't push too hard, in case he incurred the Emperor's wrath. How was he going to get the Phoenix Nirvana Sutra out of him, then? A sudden flash of inspiration struck King Qi, and he recovered his usual composure. Meanwhile, the Crown Princess noticed Ziyuan returning. She quickly walked over and asked quietly, "Did King Qi do anything to you?" Ziyuan's expression was sour. "Do you think King Qi is the type who will pat you on the shoulder innocently, but a few days later, all your blood vessels somehow end up exploding?" The Crown Princess froze. "He is a Grand Master, so he probably can do that," she replied subconsciously. Her words made Ziyuan's expression curdle even further. "Did King Qi make things difficult for you?" The Crown Princess' expression grew concerned. Ziyuan shook his head. "He didn't. He only asked me some questions. It wouldn't be helpful to reveal anything else to her. She wouldn't be able to retaliate against King Qi anyway." Despite this, he still expressed his gratitude. "Thank you, Crown Princess, for saving me. If you hadn't shown up, I might have been finished." Whether it was the Devil Sex assassins being exposed, or King Qi questioning, either would have led to a bad ending. The Crown Princess approved of his attitude. "Don't dwell on it too much. I didn't do this specially to save you. I would have done the same for any other subordinate loyal to the Crown Prince." Ziyuan couldn't help but chuckle. King Qi's earlier words were already showing their effects. This woman was afraid that he would develop unrealistic expectations about her. "The Crown Princess empathizes with us officials," he replied. "We all understand." The Crown Princess nodded. "Let's head back to the Eastern Palace before King Qi finds you alone and seizes you again." Ziyuan found himself in a bind. "I won't be returning with you, Crown Princess. I still have some matters to take care of." He still had to clean up the situation within the Imperial prison, before anyone grew suspicious of him. "What else do you need to take care of?" the Crown Princess asked curiously. Ziyuan cast his mind about, then said, "His Majesty made a request of me." He wasn't exactly lying. After all, the Emperor had ordered him to infiltrate the Devil Sect, hadn't he? Even if the Emperor found out about this afterwards, it would be no big deal. The Crown Princess was rather surprised. She looked at him with fresh eyes. She was surprised that he had gained the Emperor's favor as well. "Indeed, I must do my best to rope him in." As the Crown Princess' entourage began to leave, Ziyuan pulled Piao Duandiao and Jiao Sigun aside. "I won't thank you guys since we're brothers. We'll all go to the government brothel when there's some free time. It'll be my treat." Piao Duandiao's eyes, which were ringed in dark circles, lit up. "That sounds great," he said with a laugh. Even though his back was about to break from the frequency with which he visited that place, he wasn't about to refuse, not when someone else was footing the bill. Jiao Sigun couldn't help himself, and blurted out, "That's not right. Since you've already said that there's no need for thanks, then why are you inviting us to?" Piao Duandiao cut him off before he could finish. "All you need to say is whether you want to go or not." Jiao Sigun seemed conflicted, but he couldn't resist in the end. "I want to." "If you want to, then just shut up." Piao Duandiao smacked him on the back of the head, then smiled at Ziyuan. "It's decided, then. We'll meet up when we have some free time." Ziyuan chuckled. He felt as though he was among friends from his previous world. "Pa, was I also such a person back then?" Seeing that there was no one left around him, he quickly went back inside the imperial prison. He had to somehow wake up those jailers, and then pretend to have just woken up as well. The jailers blinked rapidly when they realized that the prisoners were gone. All of them began to panic. This is a sin punishable by the eradication of the entire clan. As they mumbled amongst themselves, their leader hurried to sound the alarm. Ziyuan grabbed him. "What are you doing?" "Obviously I'm contacting the other imperial guards to search for the criminals," he replied swiftly. "Are you sure you want to do that?" asked Ziyuan. "If word of this matter gets out and it blows up, all of your possessions will be confiscated, and your entire clan will be eradicated. But if we don't immediately issue a report, the same thing will happen." The head jailer was on the brink of tears. Ziyuan said, "All of us are responsible for the escape of the criminals today. Once our superiors begin to assign blame, none of us will survive." The prison head grabbed his clothes. "Lord Ziyu, you're experienced and knowledgeable. Please tell us if you have any suggestions. How about we send some people out to see if the criminals have done anything yet," suggested Ziyuan. The prison head paused for a moment, then quickly sent out some of his men to investigate. They reported back swiftly. "All is quiet within the palace. Nothing seems to have happened." Ziyuan sighed in relief. Sun Lehen and the others must have already escaped. The head jailer was confused by this. How could this be? How could these prisoners escape without drawing any attention? "I know." Ziyuan pretended to have suddenly realized something. Drawing the head jailer's attention, he pulled him into a corner and said, "Do you remember those golden armored guards that barged in without warning?" His conversation with King Qi had revealed that King Qi knew about the events within the prison. It was likely that he had informants within the prison. He wanted to talk to the head jailer privately, to prevent any more information from reaching King Qi's ears. "Were there? I don't remember." The prison leader scratched his head in confusion. His brain felt extremely foggy. He just couldn't remember. Ziyuan criticized him harshly. "How can you remember nothing? They were King Qi men. Your men tried to stop them from barging in, but were knocked out by them." "Hey? It's coming back to me, vaguely. I was pretty angry as well." What happened afterwards? The prison leader felt as though his head was about to explode, yet he still couldn't figure anything else out. Ziyuan sighed. Worries be gone really could disrupt one's memory. However, it didn't completely erase the memory, but merely broke up the memories into fragments. With enough reminders, the mind could still piece a little of it back together. After speaking these half-truths, the lead jailer finally remembered the arrival of King Qi men. Ziyuan pressed on. "Who do you think could possibly rescue these criminals in such a supernatural way, without alarming any of the other guards?" The head jailer seemed alarmed. "Are you talking about King Qi?" He remembered that the prisoners had insisted that they were working for King Qi. Could King Qi have come to rescue his own men? Or perhaps he'd come to silence them? Ziyuan immediately took a step back. "You said that, not me." The jailer jumped in fright. I was only speculating," he said quickly. "I'd never slander King Qi." Ziyuan walked over and put his hand on the jailer's mouth. "We're all tied to the same ship now. If King Qi rescued these prisoners, there's no need to make this information public. We'll find a way to report this secretly. Our superiors will know how to handle this." The head jailer hesitated. "But we'll still be punished for our negligence." "Are you dumb? Think about who the culprit is for a minute. It's King Qi, His Majesty's own brother. Would His Majesty really take him to task over this? This matter will surely remain unsettled indefinitely. If no one investigates, we can't be charged with any crimes," explained Ziyuan. The head jailer's eyes lit up. "Lord Ziyu, you truly are the guiding light that shows us the way. If it wasn't for you, Lord Ziyu, all of us would have been dead many times over." Ziyuan's expression darkened. Is this the right way to use a guiding light? Despite this thought, he repeated his warning to the head jailer. This is an extremely important matter. Don't tell anyone else about it. The more people know about it, the faster things get out of hand. Once the nobles within the imperial court find out, it'll be a bloodbath. If that happens, His Majesty would not be able to keep the peace, and we'd all be done for. The prison head patted his chest and said, "Of course I know that. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone about it. As for my guys over there, I know how to keep them quiet." "That's good, then." Ziyuan left the imperial prison in a better mood. The only thing left to take care of was to get Yun Jianyu out of the palace. He sighed. "To be honest, I really want to continue living together with that incredible beauty." As he wallowed in regret, he suddenly sensed something, and his head whipped around. However, there was no one behind him. Is there someone following me? Or was that just me being paranoid? Chapter 669, Two Faces. Ziyuan felt rather unsettled. Danger lurked around every corner, and he wasn't about to let down his guard. Even though his cultivation had reached a rather high rank, there were many others stronger than him within the imperial palace, and there were many techniques in this world that enabled their practitioners to hide their traces. It wasn't a surprise that he couldn't sense the other party's aura. He used the jade badge to communicate with the little creatures nearby. Through their eyes, he could see everything in a 10-jong radius. Aside from the patrolling guards, there didn't seem to be anyone else. Hold on. Ziyuan suddenly noticed someone familiar around the corner a few jong away. It was a pale and chubby eunuch. Him. Ziyuan frowned. This was none other than Eunuch Wen, who served at the emperor's side. He always saw Eunuch Wen smiling, regardless of who he was around. His constant cheerful demeanor, coupled with his chubbiness, made him seem like the friendly sort. Now, though, his expression was dark and foreboding, very much unlike his usual self. Was this his true self? Ziyuan shivered. He'd been well and truly deceived by this fellow's amiable features. He'd assumed it was King Qi who'd someone after him, especially after the setback Ziyuan had inflicted on him. He never expected it to be someone on the emperor's side. Has the emperor always had someone tailing me? That doesn't seem right, though. The emperor possessed a divine will, and so he did not need to have anyone tail him. Furthermore, this sensation had only appeared recently, probably right after he'd offended King Qi. Is Eunuch Wen one of King Qi men? Ziyuan immediately jumped in fright as soon as this thought emerged. After all, Eunuch Wen served at the emperor's side. If even he had been bought by King Qi, it was merely confirmation of how formidable King Qi was. Didn't this make the emperor look dumb, though? Given how powerful he was, how could he be completely oblivious to the fact that those closest to him had been bribed? That can't be possible, can it? However, he recalled the TV shows he'd seen in his past world. The more unlikely it was, the more deadly the trap. His thoughts ran amok, and his mind started to spin. Around the corner, Eunuch Wen smoothed out his clothing, then rubbed his chubby face. The smile that Ziyuan was used to seeing returned to his face. As the eunuch turned the corner, he directed a look of pleasant surprise at Ziyuan. "Lord Ziyu, I was just looking for you." Ziyuan forced a smile. Now that he knew this man had two faces, it was difficult for him to be as easygoing as before. "Eunuch Wen. Is there anything you need from me?" Eunuch Wen smiled. "His Majesty wishes to meet with you. Please come with me to the imperial study, Lord Ziyu." Even though the sun was high in the sky, the eunuch's smile still caused Ziyuan to shiver. "Thank you for your trouble. I'll make my way over right now." "This way, Lord Ziyu," Eunuch Wen said with a smile. Ziyuan bowed, then followed the eunuch to the imperial study. Now that he'd met with the emperor a few times, he didn't feel as scared as before. Besides, the emperor still had many things that he needed Ziyuan to take care of. He'd employ his political tricks to scare him, but there was no way he would really harm him. Instead, it was Eunuch Wen, hiding behind his innocent smile, that gave Ziyuan a headache. Should I bring this matter up with the Emperor later, to determine if he's truly working for King Qi or not? Ziyuan immediately dismissed the thought as soon as it appeared. If Eunuch Wen had actually been sent by the Emperor to monitor him, he would be the one being exposed instead. Even if there's something not right with Eunuch Wen, I have no proof. Now really isn't the time to say strange things and ruin my relationship with the Emperor. This man has served the Emperor for so long, and he would surely trust him more than he trusts me. If Eunuch Wen retaliates against me, things would be much worse. It's better if I don't reveal anything right now. Eunuch Wen doesn't know that I know his true nature, so I'm the one with the advantage. If I unmask him now, I'll lose this advantage. Lord Ziyu, is there something on your mind today? Asked Eunuch Wen with a chuckle. You seem much more quiet than usual. Ziyuan shivered. Did he notice anything? He quickly flashed a smile. I can't help but feel a hint of alarm whenever His Majesty summons me, he explained. I see. Eunuch Wen seemed relieved. There's actually no need for Lord Ziyu to feel too worried. His Majesty seems to be in a rather good mood today. Thank you for letting me know. Ziyuan passed him 2 banknotes, each worth 100 taels of silver. It was always better to appease such sly and cunning individuals first. Eunuch Wen's smile widened further when he noticed the banknotes. His eyes almost closed into slits. When they arrived at the imperial study, Eunuch Wen waited outside. When Ziyuan walked in, the emperor was seated on the dragon throne, reading a book. He seemed rather relaxed. Your Majesty, I pay my respects, Ziyuan said in greeting. The emperor grunted in acknowledgement. A moment later, he lowered the book and asked, You've already freed the assassins in the imperial prison. I am fortunate to report that I haven't disappointed His Majesty in this task. Ziyuan cursed him in his heart. Aren't you asking a question you already know the answer to? You even swept your blasted divine wool over me. The emperor nodded in satisfaction. Does the devil sect suspect anything? I don't think so. I pushed all of the blame onto King Qi. He told the emperor what had transpired, leaving out a small bit. That was rather intelligent of you. Now, those people stationed within the imperial prison won't suspect a thing, and no news will get out. The emperor smiled. This kid from the streets is much more capable than those well-educated children of the nobility. I don't think there are many others who could have taken care of this matter as cleanly as he did. Unfortunately, I ended up accidentally bumping into King Qi as I left the imperial prison, continued Ziyuan. He was suspicious of the group of assassins, who were disguised as imperial guards. In a moment of desperation, I had no choice but to say that guard leader Lu Chinayu had been summoned by you, Your Majesty. The emperor laughed out loud. I never expected that resourceful lil bro of mine to be completely fooled by a kid like you. Ziyuan's expression grew strange. He knew that the two of them were brothers. The emperor was the older brother, while King Qi was the younger, which made him number 2. However, calling him lil bro just sounded so weird. Not wanting to draw suspicion onto himself, he quickly said, I'm only clever when it comes to trivial matters. King Qi was only tricked because of his carelessness. Once he looks into the matter, he will know that I was lying. As he said this, he tried his best to look worried. Sigh. I've hung out with these old foxes for so long that I'm about to become one myself. The emperor waved his hand and said, You don't have to worry about that. I'll make the arrangements. Ziyuan exhaled audibly. He'd been afraid that King Qi would look into Lu Chenjiahu's whereabouts. Now that the emperor said that he would take care of it, that was surely nothing for him to worry about anymore. The emperor remained quiet for a moment, then said, Now that you've offended King Qi, how are you going to complete the first task I gave you? Ziyuan explained, King Qi has a suspicious personality, and is incredibly shrewd. If I hand him the fake manual directly, he will only become more suspicious. By doing the exact opposite and making him think that he obtained the manual through his own means, things will go much more smoothly. Humph, not bad. What you say makes sense. The emperor nodded. That fit with what he knew of his little brother. Something came to Xuan's mind, and he said anxiously, "Your Majesty, King Qi patted me 3 times just now. I'm worried that he might have used some sort of treacherous technique on me, like a bone-melting palm. Unfortunately, I can't tell right away if he'd done so. Can you help me take a look? My life is of no consequence, but I fear I will fail to carry out the mission Your Majesty has given me." The emperor was momentarily stunned by this mention of a bone-melting palm technique, and only realized what Xuan meant after listening to his whole speech. He grew serious as well. "Come over and let me take a look." "Yes, Your Majesty." Xuan was overjoyed. With the help of the strongest expert, any restrictions or techniques that King Qi had placed on him could be easily cleansed. The emperor looked him over, then unexpectedly patted his body gently 3 times. "It's done." Xuan was overjoyed. "Thank you, Your Majesty." The emperor sneered. "Don't be so pleased. King Qi doesn't know how to employ the restrictions that you described, but I just happen to know them. What you said earlier on reminded me about it, so I've set up some restrictions on your body. This way, you'll carry out the tasks I have assigned you with more care." Xuan's mouth fell wide open in shock. Chapter 670, Looming in the Shadows. God damn it! I shouldn't have said what I said. Xuan felt like an absolute fool. I'm so stupid. I'm so stupid. I've met this emperor so many times already, but I still haven't figured out how low his morals are. If he could receive his own rage points, he'd be getting a string of 1024s right now. The emperor was incredibly pleased by Xuan's expression. Given his status and cultivation, it had been way too long since he'd felt this way. He coughed and said, "You don't have to worry so much. This seal won't activate for some time. As long as you perform your tasks adequately, I will help you remove it once the matters have been settled." Xuan furiously cursed this man in front of him. "Like hell I'd believe your stupid ass. This guy is just too evil." He knew that even if he completed those tasks, the emperor still wouldn't remove the seal. He would probably be made to do more and more tasks, until all the value had been squeezed out of him. Despite these thoughts, he still pretended to be moved to tears. "Thank you so much, Your Majesty." The emperor nodded in satisfaction. He loved the feeling of holding the lives of his subjects within his grasp. "You're dismissed." "Understood." Xuan bowed respectfully, but left with a belly full of curses. As he left the study, Eunuch Wen nodded towards him with a smile. To Xuan, though, this smile appeared especially sinister. Sigh. I wonder who this Eunuch Wen really is. A moment later, he frowned. The feeling of being tailed had resurfaced. He took control of the little birds nearby, but still didn't notice anyone suspicious. Am I being paranoid? Xuan shook his head. He had been under so much pressure recently, it was likely that he'd started to develop feelings of paranoia as well. However, he still didn't dare let down his guard. He wandered around the palace several times, using different animals to observe those around him, yet he still didn't see anyone monitoring him. He sighed in relief and headed towards his residence, the one belonging to Golden Token 11. He had to let Yun Jianyu know about Sun Lehen, and also escort her out of the palace. Even though he didn't want to part with a beauty like Yun Jianyu, the emperor posed far too great a danger. If he found out about her, he would be a dead man for sure. He wasn't about to take any chances, not after what had just happened in the imperial study. Xuan approached the residence hidden within the forest. It almost felt like he was coming home, and that there was a woman waiting for him within. This thought made him feel extremely blessed. However, he remembered the sensation of being tailed, and just to be sure, he did not walk straight in, but pretended to walk past it. He circled the area for a while, but did not notice anything amiss. He was just about to head back in when he heard Yoon Jianyu's voice. "Don't turn around. Someone's following you." What? There really was someone following him. But then Yoon Jianyu was a grandmaster, and now that she'd recovered some of her strength, her senses were much sharper than his own. "Do you know who it is? Is it a fat eunuch?" asked Ziyuan. "He is very skilled in his concealment technique. I haven't fully recovered from my injuries yet, so I can't tell exactly he is, nor can I see him. However, I know that he's there." Yoon Jianyu's voice was cold, yet carried a hint of elegant charm. It really was pleasant to listen to. However, Ziyuan wasn't in the mood to enjoy anything at all. His goosebumps were rising all along his arms. After all, he'd tried so many different ways of finding out who it was, yet he hadn't seen a thing. This person was clearly formidable. As someone with way too many secrets, having such a terrifying presence monitoring him was frightening. "How about we bait him out, then take him down together?" Ziyuan rejected this idea as soon as he proposed it. The emperor was overseeing the palace right now. He would be alerted to any strange activity immediately. If Yoon Jianyu got involved, her aura would give her away. "I have an idea. Hang on a moment." After this, Yoon Jianyu fell silent. In a moment, the door creaked open. Ziyuan was stunned. "What's going on?" A masked golden token envoy walked out from inside. "Did another golden token envoy enter my residence?" Ziyuan couldn't believe what he was saying. However, he quickly realized that those were his clothes. It went without saying who this person was. No wonder Yoon Jianyu had asked for a set of his uniform previously. Yoon Jianyu was tall and slender, and the uniform had originally been designed to hide one's identity anyway. She did not seem out of place, pretending to be Golden Token 11. Ziyuan watched her as she walked. He really didn't know how she had managed to hide her long hair. Although the clothes did not reveal much, he couldn't help but imagine her graceful curves. The uniforms of Golden Token envoys were already eye-catching, but they had always been worn by men. Now that a woman was wearing it, she lent it a different sort of charm. Is this what it's like to be seduced by someone in uniform? Like a female police officer? Random thoughts swam into Ziyuan's mind, but he shook his head to clear it. Now was not the time to be thinking about such things. Ziyuan quickly caught on. He walked up and said, "Lord 11. Thank you for rescuing the Crown Prince and Princess during the attack." Yoon Jianyu looked at him. This fellow really knows how to play his part. She mumbled back in acknowledgement, keeping her voice low. From her experience, she knew it would be difficult to tell that she wasn't a man as long as she did not speak too much. Ziyuan clasped his fist. "I see you have matters to attend to, my lord. I won't disturb you then. Please, carry on." Yoon Jianyu nodded, and walked off in a different direction. She spoke to him through voice transmission. "I'm going to walk around and see if I can find that person." Ziyuan replied, "Head towards the palace gates. I've already rescued Sun Lehen and the others. You should use this opportunity to leave as well." Yoon Jianyu was overcome with joy. She hadn't expected that he would actually rescue them from the imperial prison. She was curious as to how he'd done it, but she knew that now wasn't the time. Instead, she replied, "What will you do once I leave? There is an expert tailing you." Her voice was tinged with worry. "You won't be able to help me fight him even if you stay," Ziyuan replied with a slight chuckle. "Don't worry, this is the imperial palace. With the emperor overseeing things, this mysterious expert won't dare try anything besides tail me for a while. You're my biggest secret right now. Once you leave, I won't be afraid of him following me." When she heard him say that she was his biggest secret, Yoon Jianyu's expression became strange. For some reason, those words made her heartbeat hasten. However, she quickly collected herself and said, "Very well. I'll take my leave. Let's find a chance to meet up later." As the two of them moved off in different directions, a figure slowly emerged from the shadows of a large tree. Anyone staring at that exact spot would have rubbed their eyes in disbelief. They would have sworn that nobody had been standing in the shade of that tree previously. This person seemed to have materialized out of thin air. They are two different people. It seems King Chi guessed wrong, that person muttered. He looked about. After a slight hesitation, he followed after Yun Jianyu. Yun Jianyu's voice sounded in Ziyuan's ear. "That person is following me." Ziyuan was alarmed. "Be careful." This development confused him. He'd assumed that whoever it was had been after him, but now, it didn't seem like that was the case. Who was this person, and what was he after? Yun Jianyu chuckled. "He's the one who needs to be careful." Ziyuan realized what she meant. Yun Jianyu was a grandmaster, after all, despite her injuries. The one in the shadows thought that he was catching small fry, but he'd landed a huge shark instead. The two of them grew further and further away from each other. Soon, they were beyond the range of key transmission. Yun Jianyu could continue to transmit her voice, but she would have to use a greater amount of key to do so, which would easily draw the Emperor's attention. It wasn't worth the risk. Ziyuan carried on walking along his chosen path for a little while longer, then secretly turned around and followed her. He had to see Yun Jianyu leave the palace with his own eyes in order to feel at ease. Now that the sensation of being followed from the shadows had disappeared, he wasn't afraid of being noticed. He followed her to the western gate of the Imperial Palace. Yun Jianyu wasn't walking too quickly, or too slowly. Her gait was the measured gait of an expert. "I should make her wear these clothes again if there is a chance." All manner of perverted thoughts filled his mind, and a stupid smile unknowingly appeared on his face. Yun Jianyu arrived at the gate. She displayed his golden token 11 command token, and the Imperial Guards quickly let her through. Golden token envoys were all individuals of great status, and this one had even saved the lives of the Crown Prince and Princess. He was a popular fellow in the Eastern Palace. No one wanted to offend such a great person. Just as she was about to walk through the gate, a melodious voice rang out. "Wait!" Yun Jianyu frowned, and Ziyuan also let out a despairing cry. Why did they have to run into this woman at such a time? The sound of jade ornaments jingling together was followed by a gorgeously dressed woman, who was walking slowly towards Yun Jianyu. Who else could this be but the Crown Princess?